So we are already in session. Ms. Williams, will you take roll, please?
Ms. Fowler? Here. Mr. Lane?
Here.
Ms. D. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Roberts?
Present.
Ms. Vowell?
Here.
Ms. S. Jones?
Present.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this is our Spirit of Excellence segment, and it's a time where we recognize outstanding staff and students who are truly making an impact. First tonight, we will be recognizing a teacher, Miss Britt Tate Bogard, who teaches at Bryan Hill and Columbia Elementary, has won a What's Right with the Region Award from Focus St. Louis. Her category was Fostering Creativity for Social Change. Honorees were nominated by the public and selected by a committee of local leaders. Congratulations to Miss Tate. On the student side, we wish to recognize junior Constance Benford of Metro A&C High School, the first place winner of the district's 26th annual Famous African Americans Portrait Contest. Constance, who opened an online artwork and stationery shop last year, plans to study art in college, will win a $1,000 prize for her winning portrait of Jimi Hendrix. The contest is sponsored by the National Blues Museum and SLPS Foundation donors. You can view all entries at www.slps.org/portrait. Dr. Adams.
Good afternoon to the board and to the public as well. First, good evening. I would like to congratulations are in order for the Roosevelt boys basketball team, winners of Class 4 District 3 championship. The win was extra sweet since the Rough Riders' last boys basketball championship was back in 2075. Congratulations to Coach Thornton and the team on this win. Roosevelt is hosting Vashon tonight for the Class 4 sectional game, the first time the PAHL is hosting such a sectional game. A friendly reminder, we are holding a series of forums to discuss the proposed 2021-22 school year budget. The first is this upcoming Saturday at 9 o'clock. Then we will have two additional forums on Tuesday and Thursday, both starting at 7 p.m. of next week. All of the forums are virtual, streaming with live chats. You can visit www.slps.org/budget for details. One additional reminder for families on March the 19th is a PD day with no students, and spring break starts the following Monday, March 22nd. Unlike Thanksgiving and Christmas, we will not have a 1 week all virtual buffer week following the spring break. Students enrolled in in-person instruction and all school staff shall report their schools starting on Monday the 29th. It should also indicate, which is not in part of my talking points, but we have been working really hard to try to identify vaccines such that we could make sure that our staff is vaccinated. As you know, the governor on last Wednesday indicated that teachers or educators could move into this tier starting on the 15th. There may be more information coming to parents in the community tomorrow or Thursday relative to some possibilities that might exist. So I just want to give notice. We are surveying staff at this point in time, the staff that we surveyed as of the beginning of, as of about 3 o'clock today. Some 1,800 to 1,900 persons responded, with some 1,200 indicated that they wanted the vaccine if it was available. And so they have until midnight tonight to provide that information. So if staff is listening, we ask that you go online and do so. We think there may be a really good possibility of the vaccine being available to St. Louis Public School staff as early as next week. Those are the comments that I have at this point in time. Thank you, board.
So I believe the first presentation is the monthly financial update.
Yes, we have a monthly financial, I'm sorry, there was a picture on that could see the budget information as well as the Rough Riders Class 4 championship. Congratulations again to them. At this point in time, Mrs. Banks will be coming forward with two presentations. One is the monthly presentation, followed by the presentation that the public will see. Obviously, the board is asked to give any kind of feedback prior to the budget presentation being presented on Saturday, on next Tuesday, and on next Thursday. Mrs. Banks.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. We will start with our monthly financial update for February year to date. Our financial objectives remain the same with the exception of an update to the third objective that previously indicated building financial stability with a minimum 10% fund balance per board policy. We have successfully built that stability over the past 10 years. Now the objective is to maintain long-term financial stability with a 30% fund balance. And we have a new fund balance policy that is forthcoming if you haven't seen it yet. There have been many questions about why we have so much fund balance. You may have heard about the $104 million. What are we doing with the money? Why aren't we spending it? The fund balance is an important measure of economic stability. It is essential that the school district maintain adequate levels of fund balance to mitigate financial risk that can occur from unforeseen revenue fluctuations, unanticipated expenditures, and similar circumstances. The fund balance also provides cash flow liquidity for the school district's general operations. It is our savings account or our rainy day funds. And just to provide some context, our fund balance as of June 30, 2019 was approximately 28% of current expenditures. The average of the 555 Missouri school districts was 36.3%. Districts ranged in their fund balance from 1% to nearly 300%, putting us in the lower 40% of districts. So yes, $104 million sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but it represents about 25% of our operating budget. It is very sound practice and puts us in a good financial position. Here's our standard agenda for February year to date. However, there is no COVID-19 update this month, but we will bring it back once we have something to report. Approximately $5.67 million or 53% of the CARES dollars have been spent to date. We anticipate an increase for PPE to be reflected in the March report. As students return devices, we will begin assessing the need to replace damaged technology so that the students can maintain a one-to-one status with devices. We plan to fully expend this allocation of $10.7 million this fiscal year. I mentioned last month that sales taxes were down, but they've been particularly low since January. We have reduced expectations for the remainder of the year by 25% per month, equating to about $2.8 million. Again, we've listed some of the larger expenditures for the month of February just to provide a little detail. A few new items include the Agile Sports athletic game recording and snow removal services. Here are the February revenue results for all funds. Over $13.2 million in revenue for the month and $270.5 million year to date, or 67.6% of the revenue budget are in. Note the stark difference in local revenues from February as compared to the prior month. As you know, local revenues include the property and sales taxes, and December and January are the big months for property taxes. We've received approximately 91% of the projected property taxes to date. We also received some state basic formula and transportation funds, and some federal, SIG, and SPED reimbursements. Here are the February expenditures for all funds. We spent $26.4 million in February, $198.5 million year to date, or just under 49% of the expenditure budget. Being below 50% of the budget at this point in the year certainly suggests there will be some savings based on this $406 million expenditure budget. And we'll get to some current year projections in the next presentation. We still have a stable position for the current year, even with the sales tax reductions, since the state lifted the former restrictions on March 1st. We anticipate approximately $4 million in additional basic aid revenue that will offset the sales tax reductions, but we'll be receiving additional information later this month. So I'll move to the 22 presentation after I address any questions you may have.
I have a couple questions. Regarding the sales tax decline, are we going to have to make any adjustments in the budget to make up for that decline in sales tax, like reduce expenses? And if so, what categories?
Well, we don't have to actually make a change to the budget per se.
Or our actual spending is what I mean.
Yes, and we don't anticipate having to make any reductions in services to the GOB budget at this time.
Okay, great. And then also, I just want to really thank you for clarifying the reserve, because I've heard that in mayoral conversations and in other conversations with stakeholders, and I was just a little surprised that people thought that was a lot of money. Our expenses was budgeted $406,000, $406 million. $104 million could be spent in a quarter if all things go bad. And while $104 million sounds like a lot to us individually, for a district this size, that is not that much money. And so to suggest that we don't need further support as a school district from our city and elected officials really is somewhat, and not ignorant in that sense, it's just you don't know how little that really is. So thank you for addressing that.
Thank you.
Ms. Banks, I have a question. With school reconvening to the fourth quarter, how will it affect the budgets of the schools that are now required to open? Will they be receiving an increase in funding?
Could you have that question repeated or interpret, Ms. Vanoy, or for Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones, could you repeat the question, please?
The question is, now that schools are opening for the fourth quarter, will there be an increase to the budgets of all the schools that are required to open? And if so, how many million, how many thousands, and is that in the budget that we're currently looking at?
So the question was, since schools are being required to open for the fourth quarter, will there be an increase to the budget? If so, how much in millions, how much is expected for the fourth quarter, with the idea that schools are reopening in the way that they?
Thank you. Well, with the students returning, more students returning in person, we would anticipate that there could be some increases to the transportation budget. Obviously, we'll need more buses running if more students are coming to school. There'll be some increase to our service operations. There could be some minor increases to other supplies, but I think the biggest increases will be based on transportation and food service.
I have one last question. It's regards to the taxes that we receive from real estate. And it was I understand that there was a proposal passed during our last voting session and that there would be an early childhood.
Well, regarding our PPE expense, there could possibly be an increase. However, we have planned for that occasion and we have adequate reserves in the warehouse right now, and we continue to order PPE supplies. As a matter of fact, we're ordering some items for next year already.
Okay. I have a question.
Okay, we will turn our focus to the fiscal year 2022 budgets. So of course, these are the same financial objectives that we had on the last presentation. So a bit on fund terminology. All of our individual funds within the fund categories include both revenues and expenditures. The revenues for a particular fund are used to pay for the expenditures in that fund. So there is a matching principle between revenues and expenditures. So for example, you cannot pay for title expenditures using GOB revenue. You have to use title revenue to pay for title expenditures. I think we're all familiar with the general operating budget. It's the largest budget for fiscal year 2022. It represents about 71.6%. And of that, 90% approximately are funded by taxpayers through property and sales taxes. We have over 30 grants, some of which are local, some are state, and some are federal. I've included some of the grants in each of those categories, although there are quite a few more. We also have a combination of entitlement and competitive grants. The entitlement grants are allocated based on federal law according to census data, enrollment, and poverty information like free and reduced lunch. Some of the entitlement grants include the title funds, CARES and ESSER, comprehensive, special education, and Perkins. Our debt service fund is used to capture the revenues and pay the principal and interest on our outstanding bonds. So you can think our Prop S bonds, for example. Capital funds are for major capital projects and depreciable assets. At the end of the fiscal year, districts report all revenues and expenditures to DESE in DESE's 4 major fund categories as shown across the top of the slide: general, teachers, debt, and capital. By definition, the general or incidental fund includes everything that is not required to be in the other funds, funds 2, 3, or 4. Fund 2, the Teachers or Special Revenue Fund, includes costs and revenues related to teachers and certificated staff. Fund 3, or Debt Service, includes everything related to servicing our outstanding debt or our bonds. Fund 4 includes everything related to capital projects, including the purchase or sale of fixed assets over $1,000. Most of the St. Louis Public School fund categories that we discussed on the previous slide on the left-hand column can have revenues or expenditures in all DESE categories except debt service. The debt service fund and any capital funds can only have revenue and expenditures in DESE's debt service or capital project funds, respectively. Those have specific requirements and align one-to-one with the DESE funds. So here are the basic revenue assumptions for the various funds for fiscal year 2022. Starting with general operating budget, we know that there's still some uncertainty based on legislation and also on the pandemic as that continues. But for GOB, we anticipate a very slight reduction in local revenue overall as compared to the projections for the current year. Specifically, we anticipate increased assessed valuations due to the hot real estate market that we're currently experiencing. So we assume property taxes will increase by 0.5%. Sales taxes, we still think will be down, so we anticipate a decline of 3%, but a 25% increase in our building sales. All other GOB revenue, all of the GOB state and federal revenue, we anticipate to be flat as compared to the current year. I didn't mention that the state revenue under GOB, we do anticipate a 33% reduction. However, we think that it will be fully funded based on the governor's recent restriction release. So we are anticipating for 22 for the formula to be fully funded. That's in our budget assumptions. We have budgeted 12 local grants under St. Louis Public Schools Foundation and Parsons Blewett Memorial Fund. Each of those have several grants within those categories. We also have the Simon Fund, and those three categories of local grants represent over 90% of the $9.8 million in local grants that are budgeted for fiscal year 22. We do not have allocations for all of our state and federal grants. Some of them are entitlement grants, and we have not received those allocations yet. Therefore, we are using estimates. A few exceptions to note include food service. We are assuming that we will go back to the National School Lunch Program as we were in prior to the pandemic, which will have a significant increase to both revenues and expenditures versus the summer feeding program that we are currently under. We have also budgeted $20 million of the $46 million allocation of ESSER funds for fiscal year 2022. Debt service is budgeted at $30.1 million, consistent with the property tax increase, as its revenue is primarily property taxes. Next, we'll move into expenditures and some of the fiscal year 2022 initiatives, beginning with payroll. Most of the payroll changes relate to the consolidation upgrade plans. We've budgeted 27 additional elementary reading teachers at $1.5 million, 20 positions related to the virtual K-8 school at $1 million, 71 additional support positions as listed at $2.6 million, which includes the trade staff changing from 11 to 12-month status. And then, of course, Dr. Adams has presented the literacy PD plan, and there will be some extra service costs associated with that. Some of the central office restructuring will result in a reduction of 13 positions at a savings of about $1.1 million. A 3% increase is included in the fiscal year 2022 budget for current full-time staff. As you know, we also increased the minimum wage in January of 2021 to $13 per hour, and we will increase that to $14 per hour in January of 2022. If we step back a bit, the basis of staffing really is general operating budget. And that school staffing model is based on the DESE pupil-teacher ratios using projected enrollment. So for example, up to 20 preschoolers would be in a classroom with a 20-to-1 ratio. Once students return in the fall, we make necessary staffing adjustments in September or late August for enrollment at that time. We have a staffing guide that includes the ratios and formulas that determine all GOB funded positions. These are the basic GOB positions for elementary and middle schools. The different types of teacher allocations, along with the various aides, administrative, and student support positions are all outlined in the staffing guide. Very similar are the high schools, but there are a few additional positions that high schools have, including CTE and military science teachers and administrative book clerk positions. The alternative school staffing may have some adjustments based on the particular school and their needs. They're generally not funded based on student population, but they have generally a flat amount. And we make adjustments as needed. The non-payroll changes for the general operating budget include a 15% increase to the school discretionary accounts on a per student basis. You can see the per student amounts for pre-K, K to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. Each of these amounts represent a 15% increase from the current year per student amount. Alternative and specialty schools receive a fixed amount per year, as mentioned, and those amounts have also been increased by 15%. The initial allocation of the school budgets, of the GOB school budgets, will be in the following categories, in the following percentages based on this year's challenges with the consolidation and all of the things going on. Finance will allocate these budgets, and principals will have the opportunity to transfer funds if they need to do so. Here's just an example of the school discretionary budgets for the different categories: pre-K, elementary, middle, high, and alternative, based on our projected enrollment and the per student amount. So our particular elementary school might have pre-K students and elementary students. They would be individually assigned or allocated funds based on their grade level. Other GOB initiatives included in the fiscal year 22 budget include additional nursing supplies of $60,000, a new reading textbook adoption, $500,000, some facility updates at $2 million, the senior work experience program at $1 million, the high school advanced and virtual upgrades, and some financial system upgrades at $1 million. There's really no real initiatives for the local grants, but just a little information on these funds. St. Louis Public Schools Foundation has raised significant funds, particularly over the last 10 years. And Jane Donahue, the president, will be stepping down at the end of the fiscal year. So we certainly want to thank her for all of the work that she's done, and wish her well. Parsons Blewett Fund, under the leadership of Dr. Alice Roach, also provides significant resources that have far-reaching impact, not only to St. Louis Public Schools, teachers, and other certificated staff, but to the greater community as well. We have received the benefit of over $40 million from Parsons Blewett since the mid-90s. The $1 million budgeted in fiscal year 22 is only a portion of what is actually funded by Parsons. The Simon Endowment supports technology and equipment for our special education students, primarily at Nottingham, Gateway Michael, and Madison. Of course, we have several other local grants that provide much needed support to the district, for which we are also most grateful. Of course, not having allocations for all of the state and federal grants and providing the estimates, we do know that for the additional 27 teachers, elementary reading teachers, those will be funded with Title II. That's how they're currently budgeted. The additional 2 family community specialists will be funded out of Title I. And the ESSER II funds, which I mentioned, we have budgeted $20 million, will be used for additional personal protective equipment, new and damaged equipment, replacements, and to offset any general operating budget deficits. The debt service fund balance has been declining the past several years. However, in fiscal year 2022 and going forward, there should be a surplus based on the current debt structure. This will put us in a position to consider a no tax increase, potentially up to $150 to $200 million. In addition, we now also have 2 bond issues that are available to be refunded or refinanced at lower interest rates for a savings of around $400,000 over the next several years. And we'll be bringing more information to the board on those items. So here is the preliminary fiscal year 2022 revenue and expenditure budgets by category in comparison to the fiscal year 2021 projected totals and the fiscal year 2020 actuals. We will ultimately be seeking board approval of the final GLB, food service, debt service, and non-competitive grants, and the acceptance of state and federal allocations to the district. The top green row are the revenues, and the bottom green are the expenditures. So a few highlights. Our GOB revenues and expenditures are equal. And that is only because we plan to use any deficits to be funded by ESSER. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Fiscal year 21 food service, you'll note that there is a deficit. And as I mentioned, we are currently under the summer feeding program versus the National School Lunch Program. So this deficit is really a nationwide issue for all school districts. However, once our food service fund balance is depleted, that's when general operating budget will then have to cover those losses. So we'll be looking closely at food service to see if the government is going to do anything to help reimburse food service, or if we're going to need to make some changes to our programming if we maintain under the summer feeding program into next year. So overall, our total fiscal year 22 revenues are $400.7 million. And they're up about $26.2 million as compared to the current year. Total expenditures are at $395.4 million. And they're up $23.7 million as compared to the current year. This chart depicts the source of fiscal year 2022 revenues, the largest being local revenues at 77%, and more specifically, 82% of the local revenues are from property taxes. Federal revenues are a distant second at 18% of the revenue budget, followed by state at 4% and county revenues at 1%. Here's a similar chart for the fiscal year 22 expenditures by major category, with salaries and benefits comprising 66% of the total budget. The next largest area is purchased services at 20%, which includes all vendor contracts, large and small, from transportation and Southwest Food Excellence down to the individual professional development providers and everything in between. Expenditures are rounded out by supplies and materials and debt, each at 6%, and capital outlay at 2%. Here is our general operating budget 5-year plan. We use this program to project our GOB revenues and expenditures for 5 years. There are assumptions and updates that can be made at the object level. And this page shows the rolled up summary of all the assumptions that have been applied to the details. 2020 has the actual revenues and expenditures. The current year, 2021, is highlighted in yellow, and it has the projections for the current year. You'll note the significant decline in state revenue for 2021. Total revenues are projected to be approximately $289.2 million for fiscal year 20. For 2022, the projection is $287 million, although here it's $286.3 million. We're leaving some room as this is still preliminary, and we're sure there's some adjustments that will be made. So you'll note in fiscal year 2022, a $10 million deficit. So with the revenues at $286 million and the expenditures at almost $297 million, this is where we anticipate the ESSER funds will be used to pick up the general operating deficit so that GOB maintains flat, so that we don't have to use up any of the fund balance due to the ESSER funds being available. And most likely, the ESSER funds will pick up some payroll expenditures. So obviously, we use this tool to make management changes and address any potential shortfalls. We know that there are other risks that are not included in here, including all types of legislative risks and unforeseen economic impacts. Our next steps include opportunities for the public to provide feedback on the budget, including several virtual forums and an online comment period. We will make any necessary budget adjustments, present the proposed budgets to the board, and anticipate approval on April 13th. So I'll take any of your questions at this point.
Ms. Banks, I asked a question
Thank you, Ms.
earlier
Banks.
about
My
the budget.
question, if you could go back to page 6 of the presentation. So I looked, it says that, safety officers plus 15, custodians plus 54, just about what potential public questions may arise, wondering if we do have fewer schools and we do have low enrollment, why those two numbers are going up.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understood all of that question.
I'll take it, Ms. Banks. I think I understood it. One security officer, the elementary school, which we don't have any at this point in time. So the increase for safety officers is to do that. In terms of the custodians, we are short of custodians right now by some 60 custodians, and we made a commitment also to put more than one custodian in every building. I think I indicated to the board that we have one in the morning, one in the evening, and we want to try to put 3 in schools. That as it relates to that. The other positions, moving trades from 11 to 12 months such that they can complete work during the summer. They normally would not employ during the summer, and that's the time that they can catch up on a number of the kinds of breaks and those kinds of things that need to occur. And the family community specialist also was a commitment that we made as a result of consolidation.
Excellent, thank you. Then my second question on page 13, it lays out the 15% increase in discretionary funding per student on a per student basis from pre-K to 12. Thinking, and I don't know how my fellow board members feel about this, but seeing as the closures and consolidations did affect a majority of the middle schools, even though they got elementary schools, even though they got a 15% increase, it was already a lower number. So it's a 15% increase to a lower number. But seeing as I feel like that group of schools was the most effective, is it possible to explore increasing that by more than 15% for our elementary schools?
We definitely could entertain it, Mr. Lang. I think, and Ms. Banks could correct me, I thought we were looking at 143 for all elementary, not just pre-K being 115. I thought it was 143 across the board for all elementary as opposed to 115, 143. And you might want to go back and look at the notes on that. I think that was the case, but we can kind of go back and look at Mr. Lang's request. So what you're asking us to do is to look at a differential kind of increase for elementary schools.
Yes.
Gotcha.
A follow-up question. And I had a question on the per school amount for the schools. How did we come up with the amount per student, the 115, the 143? $143.75. How were they calculated? How were they determined?
Well, this has been based on a number of years, and oftentimes this has been kind of carried over from year to year with some increases. I know that there were committees in the past that talked about the various rates. There was conversation that high schools were more expensive and needed higher funding and those types of things, where we had discussions with various parties really over the years.
Okay.
But as Dr. Adams mentioned, we certainly can take a look at these different allocations to see if they need to be updated to something else.
Yeah, I support that since it hasn't been done. And then the other question I had regarding the discretionary budgets, are the principals required to follow the procurement policies of the district as they spend that money, or is there, how are the internal controls over those funds handled?
For their discretionary accounts,
Yes.
they have a lot of flexibility in how they spend those funds. Of course, they need to be consistent with their school plans. They need to support their school plans. But they really have a lot of flexibility as long as they can actually transfer funds into the different categories. But there is quite a bit of flexibility with the general operating funds.
Okay. But do they have have documentation to support their spending and things like that as they spend those funds?
I'm sorry.
Do they have to have documentation to support their spending, or is the spending actually take place at the district level, even though the principal directs the spending?
They actually take place at the school level, the majority. Well, at least these discretionary funds that we discussed today, they're all at the school level. Of course, there are some district level expenditures that take place on behalf of the schools, and those are the funds that have to be allocated out to the schools. But these are at the principal's discretion.
I see. Okay.
But they do, and I think I understand your question, they do have to follow the policies as it relates to spending, contracts, procurement if it's over 15,000. So yes, they still have to follow the policies of the board as it relates to spending those dollars.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Yes.
that. Then I have a question about the HR formulas used for salaries. Do those formulas include salaries, benefits, and professional development, the HR formulas that's used to calculate the various teacher costs? You said at one point that you use HR comes up with some formulas to come up with the cost for teachers and things like that.
Yes, well, the staffing guide is based on the DESE per pupil
Okay.
ratios.
Okay.
And so it's based on the FTE count. It really is independent of actual salaries, how much an individual teacher may be paid. It's based on the FTE
Oh, I
count.
see. Okay. And then just two more questions. The food service, you talked about in the budget that at some point you will have to figure out how to handle the summer feeding program. Won't the PPE or the COVID dollars cover it through 2023, I think, or the food program for the summers? Won't the COVID dollars cover that?
Well, that is a good question. There are certain funds that I guess DESE used to cover some of those. You have to use certain, I guess, revenues that DESE did use some of those CARES funds to pay for something, or as the ESSER funds covering some of the food service costs.
Right.
I guess we haven't looked at that specifically. I know that there's a lot of conversation nationwide about this issue in particular, but we'll certainly take a look at that. Thank you.
And then my last question was on the fund balance. You show a decline of that fund balance over the 5-year projections, and you said the ESSER funds will make up for that. But starting in 2024 and 2025, it doesn't look like we have the ESSER funds to cover the shortfall. How do we get to our 30% and then maintain it if we continue to have a decline in that fund balance and don't have funds to cover the shortfall?
Good question. Well, obviously, that's one reason that we use the tools so that we can look out long-term and start to make plans for those types of things. So obviously, we'll have to make some changes within the district. And, with the assumptions that were used in the GOB projection, that's really probably a high level projection. Certainly some of the assumptions for, if we lose students, of course, we will ultimately have a reduction in staff, and some of those things aren't included in those projections. But obviously, as a district, we'll have to make different decisions to make sure that we maintain that fund balance that is being proposed.
And I think also this is a good exercise for those who think 104 million is a lot of money, is that your projections show how easily that could disappear if not managed appropriately. So thank you.
Donna has some questions.
Yes, my question is in regards to an issue that the voters voted in back in 2020, and it was in regards to the early childhood education funds that will now go to an agency that is not affiliated with St. Louis Public Schools. Many voters thought they were voting for more money for St. Louis Public School, and that's coming out of the property tax money that we normally would get, I thought. And so I want to know, how is that going to affect the budget? And with many other outside agencies utilizing those funds to set up early childhood education, how will that affect us and affect the budget?
So at this time, those are external dollars to the district. As you already indicated, those dollars, if I understand correctly, are going to the mental health board, and the mental health board will be able to give out grants. I cannot give out grants to schools, my understanding is, will give out grants to nonprofits and early childhood centers to spend money for early childhood in the city of St. Louis, but none of those dollars, to your point, can come to the district at all. It should not have any impact, direct impact on us, other than those dollars being diverted, as you indicated, to an entity that is not necessarily an educational institution.
Dr. Adams, on page 8, Ms. Banks spoke to the PTR, the pupil-teacher ratio, and since the district is still following social distances, what modifications will we be making and to ensure student safety?
That's an excellent question. As it relates to next school year, we hope and believe that we will be back to some degree of normalcy, but obviously we will be guided by the health professionals if they indicated that we still have to do the 6 feet of distancing. If that is the case, Dr. Roberts, then we will be coming back to have another conversation with the board and the public about what that looks like in our buildings. But at this point in time, the budget is based upon us returning back to a normal school setting. If that changes between now and the summer, we will have to come back with the idea of some virtual instruction as well as in person.
Thank you. My next question is, I do recall that we were in receipt of a letter indicating that the district makes a substantial contribution to the retirement system, and I didn't see that reflected in today's report. And does that amount ever increase?
Ms. Banks, where is that listed in terms of expenditures? I think that's what the question is in your budget. And that amount does increase or can go down depending upon the bill and the actuary and a bunch of different things. Ms. Banks was on the board, so she's better at answering this question.
Yes, it's not spelled out specifically. It is certainly embedded with all of the payroll expenditures, the actual pension contribution that is made every year. It is declining based on the 0.5% decline each year. I think we'll be at 15% for fiscal year 2021, I think 15%. So the reduction is built into the benefits. Of course, all of that in the detail is spelled out with how much that would be, which is roughly $31 million across all funds.
And my final question relates to your discussion from page 22, where you indicated that CARES dollars would possibly be used for payroll, and CARES dollars are temporary. And so how do we leverage temporary dollars for staff?
The CARES Act gives us the ability to cover a number of things, counselors, social workers, and so we're leveraging dollars for that purpose as indicated in the budget for the next 2 or 3 years. I think once 2014 comes, you can see no CARE dollars. And to Mrs. Fowler's question, what happens after that point in time, then we have to make some decisions about what we need to look to do as it relates to that from a budget perspective and also from a staffing perspective. So we can use the CARES dollars. We have a lot of flexibility to use them. So we're backfilling the support in those social emotional areas that we talked about earlier that was so critical and needed as we move back from the pandemic to regular instruction. But we are mindful of those, and obviously we'll be coming back to make some adjustments probably in year 2 and year 3.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, so as it relates to the payroll portion of this presentation, the salary increases, is that going to be a across the board increase? Everyone's going to get the same amount, or how does that look? Could you speak a little bit more to that, please?
At this point in time, the board has approved Local 420's salary increase. We are discussing tonight MNEA proposal, and we are waiting for the custodians to finish their negotiations such that the board can look to vote on that. So at this point in time, it includes all those representatives that have been supported by Local 420. Central office as well as administrators are not included in that at this point in time. I hope to have that conversation with the board as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams.
You're welcome.
Ms. Banks, do we have I was just looking through the numbers that were increasing at the staff level. Do we anticipate are we putting in any increases for social workers in our schools?
We are not, no, sir. We're using the same numbers we had last year.
Okay, and with those same numbers, that wouldn't guarantee one social worker per school, does it?
No, that is not what we are committed to. We committed to one social worker, one counselor, one FCS, and one security guard, and a reading teacher elementary. What we said for social workers is that we would look to reassign them based on equity. And so the numbers are consistent with what we had this year. With less schools, we believe that we have greater coverage.
Okay, and then I also know that there was a call for more full-service schools. Can we get a projection on what that would cost? Obviously, that's something that we can't have tonight. Or actually, well, a couple of questions. What part of the budget fund category does our payments for our costs for full-service schools come out of?
So that would be staffing, and we also get some dollars, or we have gotten some dollars from a grant from the city of St. Louis that we've used. I would think that would be payroll, Mrs. Banks, but you can cover that.
I'm sorry, I could not
Oh,
hear
sorry,
your question.
full service schools, the schools at Walbridge, the school at Yateman, and I think Vashon is the third full service school. So the staff that are housed there will be part of our payroll, and I think a grant coming from the city supports some of the supplies and materials, but it would be the full service schools that are at those 3 school sites. Mr. Lane is asking what budget do they come out of?
So if this is, well, the summer food program is basically run by the, kind of like through some of the city, and that would be in the food service budget.
No, not food service, full service. The full service after school program that is housed at Yateman, Walbridge, and I want to say Vashon. It was a grant that is coming from the city of St. Louis, a security grant coming from the city of St. Louis that we had about 10 when I got here. We cut it down when the city made a budget cut. Well, I'll get you that information, Mr. Lane, in terms of directly where it's coming from. I know what you're talking about. I just don't know what budget is directly coming from.
Okay, and with that, when you get that to me, could you also include just what the full cost would be?
Yes,
and then
sir.
what schools could be on the list to extend that program to?
Yes, sir. I can get you that cost and a projection.
Awesome, thank you. And then my last comment, Ms. Banks, is just more for aesthetics, and you can keep it or leave it. But just knowing that education is something that a category that consistently deals with budget cuts. So maybe a graphic of a budget, the word budget being cut, may not be the most palatable for the community. Does that make sense?
You talk about the picture on the screen. We
Yeah.
have budgets and cuts.
It might be
So
not the
he's
most.
making a recommendation that we
Yeah.
might want to not have that picture on number 18 that you see right behind you. If you look at the screen, it shows at the bottom a budget being cut. Just the optics of it is what he's indicating.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for Ms. Banks? Thank you, Ms. Banks. We'll make the updates and corrections, and it'll be part of the presentation on Saturday, next Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you. Dr. Moody, I think you're doing a presentation on summer school, please. We're still in the throes of planning for summer school. Obviously, a number of factors will determine where we end up. Our preliminary indication is that we put some information out yesterday, and obviously it's going to depend upon how many kids are really interested in coming back to summer school and what that might look like. So, Dr. Moody.
Summer school plans are developing. There we go. And I'm just going to share the overview with you this evening. A big part of those developing plans includes our summer planning committee. The summer planning committee consists of a team of teachers, teacher parents, school leaders, network superintendents, and other district level leaders whose primary function is to contribute to the efficient planning and organization of Summer Learning 2021. A big part of our planning focused on ensuring that information for summer learning is clear and precise with stakeholders in mind around context, sessions, intervention and outcomes, program enrichment, technology, and the development of extended programming for educators. We met twice in February, and meetings are also scheduled for March, April, and May of 2021. Our next steps planning includes developing a stakeholder communication plan and planning for student recruitment, enrollment, and retention. Our context for summer 2021 includes supporting students on their recovery of unfinished learning as a result of COVID-19, preventing summer learning loss, increasing opportunities for intervention and credit recovery, including students who qualify for summer school according to Senate Bill 319, and decreasing the opportunity gap. The background for Summer Learning 2020 includes, it's designed to provide educational opportunities, again, for students who require additional academic support to recover from unfinished learning, and those transitioning to the next grade level, credit recovery, and those who need support meeting statutory requirements for graduation. The 2021 summer session will consist of 2 concurrent sessions, tentatively, scheduled for June 7th through July 9th. That's 5 weeks. Session 1 is our credit recovery session. It's designed for high school students who need to take credit recovery courses or meet state guidelines required for graduation. Session 1 will be held virtually and in person at all SLPS school sites. Session 2, Academic Gear Up, is a program for students in rising kinder students and through rising 9th grade students. This program is designed to reduce the literacy and achievement gap through high quality research-based instruction with a focus on reading and math. Session 2 will be held in person at all SLPS school sites. The expected student-teacher ratio is 10 to 15 students to 1 teacher. Again, credit recovery is for grades 9 through 12. It is virtual or in person on a case-by-case determination. Assistant principals, teachers, leaders assigned to summer school leadership. Grades K through 8 is for academic gear up session, rising kinder through rising 9th grade students. In person, skills-based, a minimum of 50 students per school site. School sites that have under 50 students enrolled will be moved to neighboring schools. Assistant principals, teacher leaders will be assigned to summer school leadership roles for those sites as well. Interventions. The universal Tier 1 interventions for summer learning will include a standards-based curriculum, cross-curricular programming, common formative assessments, common summative assessments, and daily supports. The Tier 2 intervention for summer learning will include synchronous and asynchronous and research-based instructional programming provided to students synchronously and, of course, synchronously, in addition to the universal supports. Pending partnerships include Girl Scouts of America, Gateway Greening, COCA, Springboard to Learning, Aim High, and Junior Achievement. Continued support during summer session 2021 includes all students enrolled in summer learning will have the privilege of keeping their one-to-one technology until the close of summer session on June 9th. This will also include synchronous and asynchronous virtual training for educators and families. on-site technology support, daily help desk support, and virtual learning program support for those high school students in credit recovery. Extended programming for staff. So we're also extending our summer learning experiences for staff this summer to not only include PD booster sessions and ELA, math, science, social studies, and virtual visual and performing arts instruction, but we are also including opportunities for staff to engage in recreational programming and self-care, inclusive of yoga, golf, outdoor Zumba, and virtual cardio workout sessions. The interest in those sessions appear to be high. 84% of stakeholders surveyed, teachers surveyed, indicate that they are interested in participating in both PD booster sessions and self-care activities. Again, summer programming, planning for summer programming is in progress. This is our tentative schedule, and we are hopeful to be ready to roll with summer programming by April 26, 2021. Any questions?
I do have a question. This is for the summer school program? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, this is for the summer school program?
Yes.
The credit recovery program, I had a question about that first.
Yes.
The question I'd like to ask is, since there are so many young people that are traumatized by what they've gone through for the last year, I want to know, are there any type of programs that you're including during this credit recovery program as well? And to me, it seems that the numbers are pretty high, especially K through 8. You said 50 per school site. Help me to understand these numbers. I'm not clear on what you're saying.
So the question is, I'll repeat so that everybody can hear it, the board included. Since so many kids have gone through trauma, grades K through 8, understanding the 50 number that you indicated, what's the class size and why the 50 number?
Okay, thank you for that question. The 50 number is again, a tentative number, but it is based on enrollment to allow for social distancing in classes, as well as a teacher-student ratio around 1 to 10 students per every one teacher, with a maximum of 15 students to every one teacher. We have spent a lot of time in curriculum and instruction talking about trauma and re-traumatizing students throughout this process. We've also spent a lot of time talking about unfinished learning. And so we are encouraging teachers and staff to simply just show up for kids like we show up for families in times of crisis. And we are also hoping to have, in addition to teacher support, counselors at every site as well this summer, which is something we normally don't do during summer learning, as well as some social, emotional, instructional opportunities embedded in our Tier 1 instruction.
So,
Yes, no,
so I
I
just want to clarify this a little bit. No more than, well, good.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
No, I said, go ahead, Ms. Jones.
Okay, and I'd also, I'm sorry, I wanted to include the 9th through 12th as well, because recently one of our local news stations did a program on teen suicide and in regards to the pandemic as well. And I'm just really concerned that we don't have an active, I know that you talked about hiring therapists, but in every program, I guess I wanted to see more therapists included and social workers included even in the credit recovery program, because so many of our young people are not aware. And where's the advertising? How are they gonna find out about what kind of services are available? Because we have a lot of programs, but a lot of our programs are not advertised as well as they might possibly be. And we have so many students in crisis right now. So how would that go?
Did you hear the question? Okay.
We just launched today on our website information about summer learning. And I began talks actually today with the Office of Institutional Advancement about advertising inclusive of radio promotions. So we are working, again, these are plans that are in progress, and we are working diligently to make sure we get the message out around summer learning opportunities for St. Louis Public School students.
So, Ms. Jones, I think in the first question, the minimum number for elementary school is 50. The ratio in the classroom will be 10 to 15 to 1. So we want to reduce the class size such that the teachers can have more time with kids around counseling and those kinds of things. What Dr. Moody is indicating is that the high school level, we were looking at a model that would have virtual and also a model that would have an in-person at the high school level to give kids the flexibility to do both. Unlike what we've done in the past, we have not had social workers and counselors involved in the summer school program. That we will do for the first time this year is what we're looking to do. So we are cognizant of that issue. I saw the same story on I won't say the channel, but on TV. And we are cognizant that we need to do something to have wraparound services to support kids because they've been so isolated over the last year and a half. So we are aware of it. We are advertising to try to get kids in person, quite frankly, and then provide the kind of support they might need for credit recovery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions?
I have one. So I'd be interested in hearing more about the start date being June 7th. It feels very close to the end of the school year for teachers. And so I'd like to hear more about how that planning time would look and teachers having an opportunity to, with the intent that this focus on unfinished learning, how are we making sure the teachers have enough time to prepare and plan to go into summer school and address those things?
I'll take that one. That is an excellent question. I'll be coming back to the board likely in the next 30 to 45 days to talk about a possible adjustment in the school calendar such that we can address exactly what you're talking about. Staff and I have talked about it. I've talked to the union about it as well. So I would suspect that we'll be coming back with a plan to try to address that issue for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously to give teachers a little bit more time, and secondly, to try to encourage more teachers to participate in the summer program. So just if you could give us the next meeting, I'll be coming back with a likely recommendation.
And so that recommendation would be on the current year's calendar?
That is correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dr. Meady, I have two questions. I'll try to just ask them together. So I know that it says that for session 2 for K through 8 in the 9th grade transition, that's going to be all in person, and hopefully everything goes well over the next couple months. But for families that still might not be okay with sending their children in person, do we have a backup plan, or is there going to be other options? Are there going to be other options for those families?
At this juncture, there is no virtual option for rising K through 9th grade students.
Okay. And secondly, knowing that we are trying to combat, that summer melt and summer learning loss, and we also additionally have to deal with COVID learning loss, what data will summer teachers have at their fingertips be able to use to address those specific gaps that kids have?
Of course, STAR data and Scantron data. And this year we have implemented district level common formative and summative assessment, and that data will be available as well.
Thank you.
have one question. How long will the summer days be? Will it be a full school day or a half day?
The time for summer school has not yet been determined. It will likely be an abbreviated day as we generally do in summer sessions. Thank you. Any further questions?
I do have a closing question. You indicated that the kinds of assessment pieces that would be used to drive the instruction in summer school, when will that be available to teachers to kind of take a look at and massage it to be in preparation for kids? They can't do all of that simultaneously.
They cannot. That's an excellent question. So the curriculum instruction team have actually developed tracker packs to be kept at school levels. Once we identify students who will be participating in summer learning, we can run reports by school. And this is another great thing to have summer sessions by school. It makes it easier for us to share the school level reports through those tracker packs, which is inclusive of classroom grade level data, common formative and summative assessment data, Scantron data, and common formative and summative assessment data by grade level, by teacher, by school.
Thank you.
I would like to go over the proposed 2021-22 calendar update based on information we received from the public. Obviously, you received this presentation. I will be asking you to take a vote on this tonight in preparation for us publicizing the calendar and getting it out to the parents. There were 372 comments submitted online from the 9th of February to the 28th. More than a third of those comments were related to duration and our reinstatement of the breaks, winter, spring, and summer. You can see what the breakdowns were. Holidays, 115, 137 for breaks, 14 for the number of class days and hours, summer school, 2 parent-teacher conferences, 61, professional development, 32, the start date, 41. As you know, we are mandated to start when we do, 10 days. We have to start 14 days before the Labor Day, alignment with other districts, and 64 were other. So these are some of the comments. I won't necessarily read them all to you, but winter break should be 2 weeks, 137 comments. As you can see what the comments were here. 4 days is too many for parent-teacher conferences. How will teachers be compensated? Should have the day off. Quite frankly, our calendar does address this. Teachers will be doing parental conferences, and then that Friday, we're looking for that not to be a school day as we have traditionally done. We did not do that this year, however, based on negotiations with the union. And start of the school, 41 that were germane to this. And again, as I indicated before, it would be my desire always to start earlier, but in light of the pandemic, in light of the fact that we are doing a longer summer school, in light of the fact that we have to start 14 days before Labor Day, this was the best time to start. And most districts in the city are looking to do the same thing, charter schools and the county as well. You saw the calendar last time that aligned to that. Professional development, some teachers felt that it was too much. 2 weeks is too overkill, as you can see. We think this is a valuable time in light of the fact that teachers have not been engaged in in-person instruction for over a year. And so we need the time to prep teachers and get them prepared for the work that they will be doing, in light of the fact also that some of them will be coming back to the classrooms for the first time in the fourth quarter based on the directive. So at this point in time, I'm requesting that the board approve the proposed 2021-22 calendar. We did not make any adjustments at this point in time. I think we always have the ability to go back and look at winter breaks as we did for Thanksgiving this time, But in light of what we know right now, we would like to keep the calendar based on the recommendations that the board received at the first presentation.
Based on Dorothy's question regarding summer school time, how would that affect the calendar though?
It would not have any impact on this year's calendar. Her question was relative to, because this is a July 1, June 30th, 2021-22. Her question was germane to 2020 to 2021 calendar, which is June when summer school starts. And as I said before, I'll be coming back to the board around some days in this particular year. And so having the days we have now gives us the flexibility on the end to make any kind of adjustments that we need to make if we need to be nimble as a result of the pandemic or the likelihood of something happening again next year. Is there no other questions? Again, I'll be asking the board to take a vote at the time that we will be doing a vote.
There is a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in regards to the calendar, when you talk about parent-teachers conference, a lot of parents are not interested in coming to the building. Is it something different that we can do by scheduling Zoom conferences with parents, especially ones that are busy and the ones that are still afraid of COVID? Thank you.
Excellent question. Starting next week, obviously we have parent conferences next week, and most of those conferences are going to be virtual. As a matter of fact, I think all of them are going to be virtual. We're not requiring teachers to come to school. I think the model that we are putting in place this year might, Ms. Jones, to your point, be a model that we look to put in place next year, with parents being given technology and teachers having access to technology to look at a new way of doing parent-teacher conferences. We've learned a lot from this endeavor, albeit a very difficult learning. We think we can set some models up that would allow parents, as they will be doing Monday, doing virtual parent-teacher conferences by doing this next year as well. So excellent idea, something that we've talked about, and it is something we're looking to extend beyond just this school year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Adams brought up the idea of mental health days for teachers and education staff. Do you have any updates on that?
So we did look at your recommendation, Mr. Lang. Well, there are three issues. Number one, teachers get 10 sick days and 2 personal days. And so they do have built in already 2 quote unquote mental health days. To your point, this has been a very unusual year. And so I do think it makes some sense to make some adjustments, and that's why I'll be coming back to you next year relative to this particular year. I am not, at this point in time, making any kind of recommendations for that next year. 2 reasons. Number one, we have to negotiate that with the union. Anything that we do around the school calendar, we have to negotiate with the union. The agreement with them calls for 210 days that teachers have to work. And that also has an impact on the non-certs who get paid hourly. So I'm leaving the calendar as it is now to give me some flexibility, not to necessarily put it in the calendar right now, but to give some flexibility for possible negotiation with the union next year if we see there is a need based on what happened this year.
Okay, thank you. And that was going to be my follow-up, whether this board needed to put together a proposal to the union to be able to get that conversation started for subsequent years.
That would not be the board's responsibility, but administration. The board can get something to me and we can go to them to talk about the possibility of doing that. I do think maybe another term other than mental health days might be a more appropriate term to use for this kind of conversation with the union. But right now they do get 10 days and those days are 2 personal and 8 personal days. And we did make some adjustment this year by giving, and I use the word giving, but allowing Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving to be used as days as well to give teachers off the entire week. I suspect I'll be coming back with a recommendation to the board, but I also want to be cognizant of the fact that we do need to have kids in class on a regular basis as much as possible. And the reason why we have the 174 days is for that purpose. While that we might have a few more hours than we need, I do think it's incredibly important in light of what we've seen this year across the country. Kids do better when they're in schools. And so I just want to kind of lift up that notion of trying to get as many hours in front of kids as necessary. Hearing no other questions, are there another question?
No, I was just going to ask if there were any other questions. Are there any on virtual?
Okay. The next item is the update on a consolidation update. And obviously in this recommendation is a Sumner's recommendation that I'll be making. First and foremost, to give you some idea of student recruiting, this was not this Friday's data. This was the data before this Friday. I think it was the 28, I think it was. But the bottom line is about 1,042 students we've contacted. We've been able to get in contact with virtually everybody, at least made some contact, even if that was an email or dropping something off on their door. We've left messages to about 50. Commitments made, about 877 commitments have been made, with the bulk of those being magnet schools, neighborhood schools. Some have left the district and some going to charters, as you see what the numbers are. And about 7% are still undecided, and we're working with those families, mainly at two schools, Farragut and Cleveland, to encourage them to make some decisions as early as possible. But we are working with those families as they are making decisions about what to do around schools. In terms of the core elective courses, you can see that the numbers are the same. I will be making a recommendation to regarding Sumner, so I won't expend a lot of time here for this particular slide. I'll come back to kind of talk about Sumner's number that's in red with a +4. For the most part, the numbers that I shared with you before are the same numbers that I had before, with the exception of Sumner. And I didn't update the number at the bottom of 239. That would have been 243. In terms of virtual school, just a really quick update. The senior work experience timeline, we've put out an RFP. We're reviewing the RFPs right now. I think we extended about a couple of weeks for other RFPs to come in. We have advertised, we are advertising for an interim coordinator work experience position that's been posted. The word interim because this is a pilot that we're putting in place, so we want to make sure that we are appropriately advertising for the position. Virtual school timeline. Virtual school director position has been posted, and a building is going to be identified tonight as I make a recommendation to the board. Facility update, really quickly relative to the facility update. Schools listed for closing: Fanning, Farragut, and Ford. By mistake, 3 schools were also listed that were taken down immediately when I found out about it. Northwest, Dunbar, and Clay were listed. That was a mistake. Those buildings have been taken down. They should not have been listed. The board did not approve those, but that was a mistake, so we took them down. I am recommending the reuse of Dunbar Elementary for the virtual school site. I know that I've had some conversations, and the board also was asked to discuss with a group that is intently interested in Dunbar. I am not recommending that Dunbar reopens as a school as it was before. It is not coming off the closure list. It still is being recommended for closure. I think the parties that met with me, they gave me a lot of information I think can be helpful long-term, but a decision has already been made. That decision is still being made relative to Dunbar not reopening as a school. However, I do think it gives us an opportunity for it to be a virtual school, i.e. an administrator will be there and kids can be virtual who attend the virtual program at that school. If something happens regarding the NGA happening, the building can still be utilized for something that might happen 2 or 3 years from right now, but the population doesn't support having a school there in the normal sense. It will be, I am recommending a virtual school. Undetermined around Clay and Northwest at this point in time, not looking to do anything with those buildings right now. There are some conversations taking place. And when I get more information relative to what parties might want to do in those 2 buildings, I'll come back to the board with that. I am looking at a possible move of CSMB to Cleveland. We did survey families last week. We are looking at CSMB. Right now, there are portables at the old Wyman site that is presently the CSMB site, and we're spending about $70,000 or $80,000 for those portables. I'm looking to get rid of that cost by moving possibly to Cleveland and enhancing the number of science labs. They have the portables, as you know, offer science labs, and we are looking at the increase of science labs at Cleveland possibly. Mr. Casey and his team will be coming on the 30th to present a full facility update to the board around some recommendations. We are looking at Beaumont, the culinary and the cosmetology, moving from Beaumont to Gateway and Vashon respectively. This has been a program that has been fairly supported, but it's a half-day program, and kids are coming half-day from their regular school to that site, and the numbers just have not generated enough for it to be viable, at least to the degree that we think it needs to be viable. Housing in Gateway and in Vashon will, we think, increase the number of kids. There is a drawback, however, kids in other schools may not have opportunity to participate in that particular program if it is going to be at those schools in isolation. And the Napa numbers we think are going to increase. And so the possibility of Napa now moving to CSMB as opposed to the increased cost that comes as a result of the possibility of updating the building called Gallaudet with the windows having to be replaced. And so we see this as a real possibility, the facility update, but I ask the board to likely hold your questions in detail until you get an update on the 30th when the facility group will come to provide a full update. The next slide is a slide around Sumner High School, and you received the full proposal. These are snippets of the proposal regarding Sumner High School. It is called Sumner Recovery Proposal. There were a number of groups that came to us relative to Sumner, the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival, the Sumner Renaissance Group, as well as the Sumner PRIC, as well as market analysis, as well as the Ville were groups that met with me and several members of my team, i.e. Dr. Gale, to talk to them relative to Sumner. And so this is the recommendation for Sumner tonight. The recommendation is that some local arts organizations have come to the table to partner with Sumner leadership to deliver intensive learning in drama, visual arts, dance, and music during the school day, starting in the fall of 2021. And they will align their courses with the state standards. In the spring semester, interested seniors right now who possibly can do internships at partnering professional arts organizations, at least, 2022. And also they're looking at a partnership around pathways and activism. To ensure community grounding, the partners will work with the community-based organizations to hire one or more program directors tasked toward integrating the elective studios into the school and the curriculum. This is not replacing Central, what happens at Central. This is an arts integration kind of program where it becomes part of the everyday environment. A school like Central, kids are really basically majoring in the arts. These kids are getting integrated with it such that it's much more around them becoming aware of the arts programs that are already available in the city of St. Louis. And hopefully these programs would incentivize kids to come to the school, but more importantly, to increase their academics and attendance as well. So some key outcomes: increased number of electives, which is what I indicated in the slide that I did, number 2, improved teacher retention, partnerships with the community, professional development, music, dance, art, and activism is what they're looking at. They're looking to increase enrollment by 10% per year and designate Sumner High School as a national landmark. There was some interest that was already taking place with one of the alumni groups that had already done some outreaches to the federal government as it relates to a national landmark. And they've had some conversations. We have not engaged them right now in those conversations. Until the board makes some decisions around it, we will not go heavily until engaging them in that conversation. It is a district building, so they can't do anything outside of the district's permission, but we will engage them if the board is agreeable to the recommendation of the superintendent tonight. I won't go over all of the research, but the research indicates that, and you received the whole research packet as well, that there'll be an increase in higher grade point average, Obviously, this is yet to be determined. Students who are much more interested in college, higher attendance, are more competitive around college, and also the belief that GPAs will go up as well. Some additional research indicates that the discipline incidents will go down. Students increase writing achievement. Also more likely for young people to have volunteerism in their genes, if you will, if they'll look to do that, more likely to vote or to participate in political campaigns. And there are some research documents that align to this, and we would actually embark on having an outside researcher look at over the next 2 or 3 years to see if these things actually did occur at this particular school. So they would basically theme this as an arts and activism focus for this particular school. I.e., I want the board to be aware, we have tried other things at Sumner, have not caught on in the way that we wanted to. In this particular case, there is some degree of organization and advisory that's coming to the table in a very real way that gives me the impression that there's a real likelihood that something positive can occur here. The cost that they are looking to put in place is about $50,000 to hire a program director. This is a cost that they're going to come out with. They're also looking to partner with us around the application of bringing a consultant around a National Historic Landmark designation. They believe that additional dollars can come as a result of that. It's already on the National Register, but it's not necessarily a National Historical Landmark designation. And we believe, with it being the first school for African Americans west of the Mississippi, it has some credence that can occur. Especially likely in this administration, maybe unlikely in the previous administration. So we think there's some opportunities here. Pathways, and I won't read all of the pathways. You see integration, dance integration, ballet. You also see the notion of, again, as I said, the COCA providing 16 to 28 hours of arts integration, professional development for the staff as well. So this is a whole staff kind of immersion, 2 days a week, 60 to dance. Kids at the end of the day, every single day will be able to participate in one of the genres that you see listed here in a way that they have not before. It's about exposure, it's about integration, but these staff persons will be a part of the school environment. Whether they will be able to relieve teachers is something we have to tweak the schedule to see, but they have made a real commitment around what needs to be done to support Sumner moving forward in the short term and the long term. On the last slide, you see the advisory group that has come together, and there are other names as well, but these are persons who have actually come to the table and are willing to lean in. You see things like COCA, the Black Rep, and so you see a number of entities here who are really interested in working to impact Sumner in a way that they have not in the past. So it would be my recommendation tonight, also like the recommendation for the other two as well, at least the calendar, to support the notion of the board approving the plan that has come before you for Sumner High School to remain open for the next 3 years with a close look at the data coming from Sumner around increased enrollment, attendance, and the additional support that's coming from the groups that I named. And obviously at this time, I'll take any kind of questions that the board has. The board has the full proposal that was put together with my team and the team that you see listed on the last page.
Dr. Adams, nothing came of the program that you had mentioned with Harris Stowe. And then also regarding the funding, would we have to add any more to that funding other than the building cost and of course the school itself?
At this point in time, the last question is no. They are asking for some support around the National Historical Register. I don't see $10,000 being that big of a lift. Also, they have an alumni association. So I think that the $10,000 that are going to come for that can be commingled a number of different ways. But no, they are not asking for any additional costs. They're also willing to move in the building, having an office of COCA, office of the Black Rep inside the building as well, such that they can actually have a presence inside the building. And I will be honest with you, it has been a really robust group of persons who have been really committed to an effort to try their best to And I called and I said this to them, and they said, no pressure at all, Dr. Adams. A last ditch effort to do everything in our power to try to support something in the way that we think it needs to be based on the historical nature of the school. So no additional dollars. Harris, though, is still having conversations with us. They are not willing right now to lean heavily in. And they have some concerns about sharing the building. They wanted to have the building to themselves likely because they realize how difficult it is to share. But they still are willing to continue to have conversations with us as we move forward in this effort. You may know that they're in Normandy doing some work in Normandy, so they want to kind of replicate that. The fact that we're in a pandemic as well makes it a little bit more difficult as well. So there are a number of factors that in other words, what they said we're not out of the picture, but just for right now, with the timing of everything, we think we need to take it a little bit slower.
And can I ask you about Dunbar? If we make Dunbar a virtual school, will other community programs be able to use the building for, tutoring or whatever may be the case?
The answer to the question is yes. We would like to see the building continue to be used by the community if possible for after-school kinds of programs. It will be open for regular school day for staff being there. And it is possible, Ms. Fowler, that kids who are virtual might come to the building, let's say 1 day a month. We want to open that opportunity as well. So the likelihood that kids will be able to come to the building if they need tutoring and those kinds of things. And to your point, if we have after-school programs going on, parents still may want them to come and participate for field trips and other kinds of things. So yes, the intent is that the building will be used by the community if need be in the past, like it has been done in the past. So those entities that I know that you received information from can still possibly partner in some way to use the building if possible.
Dr. Adams,
I believe you have a question.
Ms. Jones, I think you had a question.
Yes, I do. So as relates to Dunbar, and if that's going to be a virtual school, I just want to reconfirm that will remain the name of the school, or will we rename the school something else?
The intent is not to change the name of the school at all. The question really becomes after we talk to DESE, if it's a virtual school, do we give it a code? If we give it a code, do we have to give it a name? So we have yet not had that conversation, but it will remain Dunbar School.
Okay, thank you for that. And then secondly, I know that you said to wait for some questions regarding where some of these programs will be placed, such as like the HAIR program and stuff like that, like possibly being placed at Gateway. But I'm wondering with Sumner, will there be an opportunity for other organizations or for other programs, such as what you're mentioning for Gateway, to go inside of Sumner as well?
So that's a really excellent question. I received a call today from a university professor who wants to support Sumner as well. So I think this initial group that has come together and they are creating an advisory board, I would like to, Ms. Jones, let any kind of recommendations come through them, since they have taken the lead to kind of act as an advisory group, similar to what we do with CPN and similar to what we do with the CSNB board. So I think the options are wide open for Rankin and others. We have not been, the relationship with Rankin, not by anybody's fault, this has not worked really well, but yes, if the arts group that has come together around this particular school wants to come in and do something, because there was some conversation about renting it out as a banquet hall to be used for any kind of banquet function. So we would be amenable to anybody partnering with us to use Sumner if they come to the table with the right plan. But I would like to, from moving forward from this point on, for that to come through the advisory board that is likely going to be set up if the board says yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams.
So I saw that one of the measures that we'll look to for success is increased enrollment, 10% increased enrollment over the years. Can you speak to other measures that we'll use to determine whether this is a successful program over the next 3 years, and then who is responsible for monitoring that progress and kind of making those determinations?
Last question first. We're likely going to have an outside evaluator. We want to try to keep it as independent as possible. That's number one. Number two, attendance, enrollment, GPA will be the main factors that we will be looking at in this particular school, at least short term. What I said to the group is, since we're starting so late right now, It is likely that we're not going to hold them as accountable for the first year because the board votes on this tonight. This is March. They haven't had a long amount of time to get a program up and running, especially as it relates to those levers, especially enrollment. Enrollment was the big piece. I kind of told them we want to increase, but the numbers don't come up the first year. So what that amounts to, Madam President, our board is about 25 kids a year. The number's about 250 right now. So they would have to increase by about 25 each year for the next 3 years, so which is about 75 to 100 kids, just on the enrollment side. And then attendance, increasing their attendance. Historically, Sumner's had some of the lowest attendance in the district in terms of the 99 in attendance, and the GPAs have also been problematic as well. So those will be 3 of the big factors that we will be looking at. And obviously, we will meet with the advisory board to come up with what the rubric looks like and how we will be measuring them. Again, this is a plan. We still have a lot of work to get done. That's why I am asking the board to approve it tonight so we can get into the weeds of all of the details that need to take place.
So we'd be looking at evaluation on an annual basis.
Could you say that one more time, please?
The evaluation, I hear that you're wanting to incorporate a third party. Would they be looking at that on an annual basis, or are they looking at that at the end of the 3 years?
Annually.
So Dr. Adams, you spoke to Dunbar being used as a virtual school and the opportunity to keep that school, keep the doors open in that building to allow for future development in that area to hopefully drive enrollment back. Are you optimistic about an opportunity or potential opportunity like that for the Clay School?
Yes, sir, I am. And one of the reasons why it's not on the list to be sold is that same reason. Yes, sir. The challenge right now is I don't have an entity that might be wanting to utilize the building at this point in time. But yes, sir, that is correct. And it used to be, quite frankly, because you asked a question tonight, it used to be a full service school. So that may be one of the things that we might look at in light of your question tonight.
Thank you. And then my last question, do we have, I know that the plan is still forming, do we have a potential timeline or really just a start date for this plan to go into action?
Which one? I'm
With
sorry,
Sumner?
The beginning of next school year, but Dr. Gale is the point person who's met with the committee. If the board says yes tonight, we will start the details of advertising for the director and trying to get somebody in place before the beginning of the school year such that they can collaborate with the principal around schedules, around rooms, and all of those kinds of things. So we want to immediately get this up and running. I would, out of fairness to the team, give them until after spring break to start in earnest working on it.
Thank you.
So I saw in the proposal, there has been some surveys that have gone out. Do we have any preliminary data that would speak to how the new programming at the school aligns with the desires of the students or their families or the larger area?
I think that was intended to go out. I don't have any data at this point in time. I think they were planning on kids coming back, and obviously most of the kids have been virtual. So I have no data as it relates to a survey with that population at this point in time. But that would immediately take place when we come back, not next week, but when we come back after spring break to see what kids thought about this enhanced arts theme or focus.
So then will the data from that survey then be incorporated into the types of programming that's offered and the modalities through which it is offered?
Yes, if I understand it correctly, will that data be used to determine what the programs will look like in the fall? Yes, ma'am.
Right, so the programming for this, will it be driven by the survey data and or the larger community asks?
I don't know that it exclusively will be driven by the student surveys because many students don't have any idea of what the arts focus might be. That's why the professional development is important for the staff. And once this is confirmed or affirmed, we will start advertising publicly about the school and what it's going to be about. I would suspect nothing in terms of hard advertising will come out until like April, because we'll have a better idea that if a kid goes to this school, that the end of the day, every day, they'll take art one day, they'll take music another day, they'll take drama another day, but they'll have the ability to be integrated with all of these every single day in the school environment.
Dr. Adams, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
just have a few questions. So I want to know if we approve this plan, will this specific board, the elected board, have full autonomy over the school, or will this be a situation where, like the CPN structure, they kind of have full autonomy on how they'd like to run their schools?
Excellent question. That is the same thing the advisory board asked as well. We indicated to them that this is the St. Louis Public School District and the ultimate authority is the board. That's why we call it an advisory board and not a governing board. The CSNB is a similar kind of structure. As a matter of fact, we took their MOU and gave it to the advisory board to look at such that they can guide their decisions based on giving advice to administration and the board as opposed to actually running the school. So they will not be running the school in any way, shape, or form. They will be advising the administration and the board.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I'd like for you to speak to how this specific proposal aligns with the pillars that we have in place for our district as relates to what our main focus areas are. And then also I'd like to know, because I'm looking at what the school offers, and for me, yes, I would love for Sumner to stay open. However, it's also important to me that we're not just putting programs in place so that other entities can kind of run this. I want to make sure that when these kids do go into these classrooms, that they're able to get jobs once they leave. So if we're going to have COCA at the table and all these other entities, are they going to make sure that our kids have jobs when they leave this school?
That's an excellent question. I don't think they have made a commitment around jobs. I think they have made a commitment around experiences and the belief that this can help guide kids to considering going to college or considering careers. This is not a school that's going to put kids in a position to want to be artists. This is a school from their perspective that will expose kids to music, dance, art, and activism with the belief that it will help make them more well-rounded individuals. What the research says around a school like this is it really empowers kids to think differently about themselves and think differently about where they sit in the trajectory of becoming an adult. So they're not at this point in time guaranteeing any kind of jobs. They are talking about giving kids some internship opportunities, such as some of the kids can go to COCA, some of the kids can go to the Black Rep and do some things. But I want to be clear about this. This is not a school that's going to turn kids into artists. This is a school that's going to expose kids to the art with the belief and hope that if they learn about the arts, it gives them a greater appreciation about who they are and how they fit in the world that we're in. So I just want to be careful, Ms. Jones, and the public. This is not going to turn them into artists at all. In terms of the work experience, I do believe that they are earnestly considering how to get kids jobs in their senior year. As you know, we're looking to do that as well. I think it does align, Ms. Jones, with our mission, quite frankly, of increase exposure to kids with the community as it relates to the activism piece. And I do think there's an intent here to increase the academic achievement of kids in the schools. They understand clearly that Sumner has struggled for a very long period of time, and they think that this enhanced development of the arts can help motivate kids. It is a proposal with an opportunity. There are no guarantees here. They are willing to lean in, it seems right now, Ms. Jones and board. And so I am committed to supporting them in that effort for the 225 kids in this building. But I don't want to be naive about the fact that it's going to be very difficult to turn this school around in a way that I think this community deserves and we want to as well. But unlike the past, there are a group of persons who have aggressively come to the table, aggressively pursued us, and are willing to put dollars and sweat equity on the line around trying to turn this school around. And so I don't know if that answers your question or not to the best degree that I can. I think it's a great effort to try to look at it, Ms. Jones, albeit for the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, and so just lastly, Dr. Robinson, so thank you for that information, number one. But also I'd like to know, so because we've had Central, is one of our schools, been here for a while, what kind of support will they now get? Because this is also, in my opinion, a similar school? And has there been any discussion as relates to a collaboration of these two specific schools working together to enhance what we may already have?
Excellent, excellent, excellent question. They have made it very clear that they are not here to replace Central at all. They don't want to, they do not want to take any kids away from Central in any way, shape, or form. Central kids are really focused around dance, around music, around arts in a very real, detailed way. This is an extracurricular class that kids are taking the last hour of every single day. They have not talked about collaboration with Central because we have just not been focused on something. I do think there will be a willingness, or there is a willingness to support what might be going on at Central in some way, shape, or form. But in all transparency, we have strictly been focused around Sumner and the idea, because I asked them the question in the beginning, they do not see this as a magnet school replacing Sumner in any way, shape, or form. They don't want it to be that at all. They don't want to take anything away from Sumner, period. They don't want to take a kid away from Sumner. They want to simply expose kids in a real elective kind of way to the arts is what they are looking to do. I think you asked an excellent question though. Can this school be a benefit to Central, and what does that look like if it is? And that is a question that I can ask them at the next time we have a conversation, which will take place after the spring break if they say yes. If the board says yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams.
I have
You're
a
welcome.
question, Dr. Adams.
Yes, ma'am.
The question is in regards to the school. Arts is $1 billion industry, and I'm thinking, why can't the school district, along with the advisory board, consider teaching the skills of entrepreneurship to the students in terms of art? Because I mean, arts, they make money, and that's what they do. And our children are just to be learning a skill that's wonderful, and it can be encourage them socially and emotionally, but entrepreneurship is something that they need to learn as well. And many of our students come out and they don't know how to market themselves. So I'm hoping that this will be something that they can include within their curriculum, or our district will help with that. Entrepreneurship.
I think that's an excellent question, Ms. Jones. I think in their plan overview, in the third paragraph, it does talk about internships and partnering professional arts organizations. And I think, now that the board is raising it, I think there is an opportunity for entrepreneurship in the arts. And what does that look like? We can include that in the plan overview with the advisory board as well to talk about specifically how juniors and seniors will be getting exposure to entrepreneurship in the arts, and what does that look like? So I think it's an excellent question that we can include in with the advisory report.
Dr. Adams, is this open enrollment for students? Can any?
Sumner has a very defined footprint. Quite frankly, it's really half the city. They have the ability right now to educate 1,171 kids based on where they live. This is not a magnet school. So this is a neighborhood school. There was some conversation about it being a magnet school, and I told them that's not possible right now. I think depending on what happens here, it might be work coming back 3 years from now, 2 years from now to have that conversation. But right now, it is not open enrollment. It's a neighborhood school.
And just to follow up on all of the questions that I've heard, we still have a district curriculum in place, and this is a complement to that.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. That's exactly what they're saying.
Dr. Adams, I have a question, and it's follow up from Susan's question about who runs the school. And you said it will be a district school. But the program director that the advisory board will be funding, who will that person report to?
That person will report to the principal.
Okay.
Yes, we've already determined that the principal will be part of the selection committee for selecting that person, and the principal signs off on that person being hired to work in that school full-time to support the programs, because there's going to be nuance around how to do that, but they're looking to hire somebody with the principal's approval. And they have to go through our same process of background checks and all of those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Do we know if the entities, not on the board, but on the entities that will be actively engaged in the schools, have they taken on a collaborative project of this magnitude before?
My understanding is no. They have not working with a senior high school. They all participate in arts-based programs in our district. COCA does, the Black Rep does. All of them are infused in our schools in some way, shape, or form. But no, they've not necessarily taken a leadership role as an advisory board in any of our schools.
So I would ask that as the planning goes forward, that the appropriate supports and structures are built into it to ensure that communication between entities and then between the entities in the district and between the board and all of those logistical pieces are addressed and accounted for, because this sounds like it is a value to bring to the district, but I want it to be successful for our students and to be a positive experience, as is the intent, to make arts positive and bring that exposure to students. But there's a lot of, I would say, logistical kind of communication things that need to be well addressed up front so that it is successful in the classroom.
I think it's an excellent point. The devil's in the details, and it's going to take a lot of work to get this done. And I would suspect that the principal will be working throughout the summer to try to make sure scheduling and all of those kinds of things are done. It's not going to be easy to integrate outside faculty into a school environment like this. And so I acknowledge that this is going to be hard to do, but I do believe that it is doable based on the energy level and the persons who have come to the table so far.
Dr. Adams, I have two questions, and the first one is in regards to Sumner. They have a wonderful football field, and not just football I'm inquiring about, but the sports program in general. Will the students have an opportunity to participate in sports? Has anyone stepped forward yet to assist the advisory board in regards to that? And the second question would be in regards to Dunbar School, and it's going to be virtual for now. Dunbar, what grade levels would it serve? And I'm checking out Jefferson City. They've been putting forth a lot of proposals where you could go to school from anywhere in the country. So will we be accepting students from out of state or just the city of St. Louis into Dunbar's virtual program at this time? And would Dunbar have an advisory board? Thank you.
Two excellent questions, Ms. Jones. As far as Sumner is concerned, they will be able to participate in athletics. Last year, they did not have, the last 2 years, they have not had a football team because they haven't had enough boys to play football. They didn't have a basketball team because of the pandemic. They couldn't get enough kids to play, but that's not the only school like that. Only a few of our schools did participate in sports this year because they just didn't have kids who wanted to come and practice. So yes, the athletic programs, wrestling and the like, Summer's always had a great wrestling program. So the kids will be able to participate in all of the sports that every other high school will be able to participate in. As it relates to Dunbar, you asked an excellent question, and I don't know the answer to the question relative to where kids can be for virtual. I really honestly don't know. I will get you an answer for that. We had some flexibility this year. I know because of the pandemic, I do not know if a kid outside the state of Missouri can be educated virtually. I just don't have any idea, to be honest with you, but I can get you that information. And I think you asked a question about the advisory board. The advisory board at Dunbar, will Dunbar have an advisory board? It's not something I've thought about, but I think it is something that we can possibly look to see as a possibility, but it's not something I've thought about at all. It will be a regular school, and it will be more likely to be a PTO or PTA organization as opposed to an advisory board. But that may be something that the new director could kind of look at as they are hired over the next 30 days. I will put that down as one of the things to come back to the board on to report at a later time. I had not thought about it, but it may be an idea worth looking at.
My last comment, I think this is a great start. I would definitely love to move forward with this. I think that we have been calling for community support, and this shows that community is showing up. It is new, it's different, so it's I don't think we should expect it to be perfect, especially off the bat. There's a lot of cross-learning that needs to happen about, the culture of Sumner, about operating these services in in a high school. And I think there's work that this group is gonna have to do, like you said, Dr. Adams, but also work that we're gonna have to do on the district end to make sure that the ground is fertile for this to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Thank you, board.
So we will do the votes on the calendar and the Sumner along with the consent agenda, just to kind of keep all the voting together. So I will read I haven't read about the public comment yet. So typically at this point in an in-person meeting, we would be accepting public comment, but we are still experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have suspended in-person public attendance at our board meetings. So as part of this effort, the board is inviting interested members of the public to submit written comments to the following email address prior to the start of the meeting, which is slpsinfo@slps.org. Subject to the requirements that commenters exercise proper decorum and respect for individual student and employee privacy, the Board of Education will assemble the written comments and make them available for review by the public via a link that will be placed on the district website alongside the link for viewing rebroadcasts of this board meeting. The procedure for submitting public comment in this way will remain in effect until the Board of Education returns to the normal in-person public meeting format. So with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. So there are items 1 through 49 we have seen before. Are there any of those items that a board member would like to take separately? So I move that we approve items 03, 09, 21, 01 through 09, 03, 09, 21, 49. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on those items? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We have 10 walk-on items. So I will just, for the sake of doing this quickly, I'll make the motions. I move that we approve 03, 09, 21, 50. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane, Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Could you pause for a second? We had some questions. That's why I didn't vote. Are we all set?
No, I'm sorry, what?
I saw that there were some questions, so I paused to see if there was.
They're
I don't know
walk-on.
what the walk-on item is.
They're walk-on items, Dr. Roberts. Dr. Roberts, did you have a question?
I don't see the walk-on item.
So I don't have a printout. They're on board docs. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And can I clarify that was 50? Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I move that we approve item 03092151. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes.
You want to look on them here? I've already had them, yeah.
Yeah.
He brought you one.
I move to approve 03092152. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there questions or discussion on this item? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins,
Yes. Move to approve 03092153. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there questions or discussion on this item? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. Move to approve 03092154. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion on this item?
I do have a question, not necessarily on this item. I know a lot of the stuff is IT related. Will a large portion of this be taken care of by CARES dollars or out of our operating budget?
This is an E-rate. Most of this is E-rate, and we're gonna be reimbursed. We spend the money first and then get reimbursed by the federal government. And the reason why there's so many at this point in time, because of the RFP timeline, and we have to get this to the feds by a certain date, and that's the reason why they will walk-on items.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. Move to approve 03092155. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. Move to approve 03092156.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. Move to approve 03092157.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. I move to approve 03092158.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. Ash Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. Motion to approve 0309, 2159. Is there a second? Second. Questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. Ash Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. I move to approve 0309, 2160. Second. Questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. Ash Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. I move to accept, or a motion to approve the 2021-2022 SLPS calendar. Is there a second?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
Yes. I'm making a motion to approve the 2021-2022 SLPS calendar.
Second.
Are there further questions or discussion on the calendar? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. Ash Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. So we will, the last item we have up for a vote is the Sumner proposal. Is there someone who would like to make a motion here?
I make a motion that we accept the superintendent's plan to keep Sumner open for 3 years until further evaluation.
Second.
Are there further questions or discussion on this?
Yeah, I do have a question, actually. What happens, Dr. Adams, if after the first year of this program, it absolutely is not working? Will you make a recommendation that Sumner be closed at that time, or what would your plan be?
It would be my intent to give them, again, I think it's going to be disingenuous to evaluate them without giving them a lot of planning time for the first year. I think if you ask me about the second year, that is a high possibility. But the first year, I think they need to have more time because we are voting on this on March the 9th. It gives them very little time to get a runway started in a pandemic to do what needs to be done. So I would truly want to try to be committed to 3 years. And failure to me would be, it would just literally not be working at all, period, zero. And we would have an evaluation that the board can see. We're not going to, the board will likely not see an evaluation until July of next year anyway. And so I would think that would be disingenuous to try to close it over the summer while we are just kind of getting that up and running. So I would want to give them 3 years, Madam Board Member.
And I would imagine there would be benchmarks and success metrics, which doesn't necessarily mean by the end of year one, there's this trend, but by the end of the year one, we set out to hit certain targets and those are hit, and that would be presented to.
That is
the
correct.
board.
It would likely be half a year or quarterly. The high schools don't run on quarters, they run on semesters. So it'd likely be a January mid-year assessment, and then an assessment at the end of the year.
Just one other thing. What if, we start the program, but Harris Stoke comes and says, hey, I have all this money from IBM, that's an ideal location, then what?
That's a really hard decision. Ms. Fowler, thank you very much for making me think about it. Obviously, we, as we do now, we assess every kind of offer that comes before us. We evaluate the negatives and the positives, and then we bring some recommendations to the board. I do think the group that's there will be willing to kind of partner in some way, shape, or form. But as you know, it's not often you get an IBM to come into the community to talk about doing something unique. I think we just have to evaluate it and see what happens.
Are there further questions or items for consideration? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes. So we do have a number of board items as well. So the first, the next item would be the proposed standing budget committee. So I'll turn it over to Adam.
The ad hoc budget committee met after our last board meeting or after our last work session, the Friday following then to have our final meeting. We had a lengthy discussion about things that we wanted to include in the proposal of this. Our next steps, there's no new information from our last conversation. Our next steps are my next steps, to send the official document to the board for review for us to discuss at the next work session. And then the agenda item, I believe, will be on the April consent agenda as an add-on.
Are there any questions for Adam? So we do have two policy for approval tonight. We looked at them at the February work session. Your comments and changes were incorporated into the newest round of updates. So you should have received those via email. So we will look at 9120 first. Are there any questions or comments as it pertains to the revised bylaw 9120? So this is the one about the officer election.
Yeah, I still have I mentioned this last time, and as I read it again, I still was uncomfortable with the clause that says the board may by 5/7 vote of the entire board at a regular meeting or a special meeting remove an officer of the board at any time during the officer's term. I realize this is a super majority. I guess my concern is that I think there needs to be a cause for removing an officer, even if it's a super majority, because we don't want to start creating, and not that it will happen, but the potential for this happening could be that, we get this mob mentality that everybody's against an officer. And so I was just hoping that we could add, the board may by 5/7 vote of the entire board at a regular meeting, remove an officer for cause, including but not limited to violation of bylaws or by violation of the code of ethics. And then that officer has a right to appeal, to the other officers and maybe our attorney representative, something like that. Because I don't want to ever get to the point where, we have, a minority group on the board represented here, and then some kind of attitude exists that we don't want that person. And I say that because I know we're going to have elections, and I'm not saying this because I'm not going to be running for office, but I do have a concern anytime we just give a group of people the opportunity just to remove without a reason for removal.
Are you proposing an amendment?
Yeah, I would just say in that last phrase, the board may by 5/7 vote of the entire board at a regular business meeting or special meeting, remove an officer of the board for cause, including but not limited to violation of the board bylaws or code of ethics. And then the officer recommended for removal may appeal that decision with the other officers and the attorney representative to the board.
So I'm hearing potentially two separate things that I think have different ramifications. So if you could split them into two, we'll take them. So the piece about the appeal, Mr. St. Omer, is there any legal, does a board member have any legal right to an office and to where an appeal would be even possible?
If the board wants to create a right of appeal flowing from a decision to remove an officer, that's a board's choice. The bylaws are the creation of the boards. They're the board's own.
So it would require, so an appeal, the right to appeal would require a separate bylaw then to outline that process, or tell me?
There would have to be some type of consideration and contemplation as to what that appeal process would look like. I can say it is not something I have encountered previously with boards of education.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. St. Omer? Is this typical of a board to just be able to remove an officer by a supermajority, or does there have to normally be a cause for removal?
There is not a single common, set of because each board's bylaws are going to be unique to them. As a general rule, what I can say is this: it is rare, a rare action, but those kind of actions, those type of actions, are typically require a supermajority, whether it be a officer removal or some other kind of how shall we say, consequential board action.
Mm-hmm. I guess then I would like to maybe revise my recommendation where I leave the appeal off.
So if you want to make a motion with the wording that you want, then we can entertain a second.
Okay, I make a motion that we change the wording of, let's see, what number is this? Bylaw B9120 in the last paragraph to say the board may by 5/7 vote of the entire board at a regular business or special meeting remove an officer for cause, including but not limited to violation of the board bylaws or code of ethics.
Second.
So questions or discussion on this amendment? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Vowell?
No.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
No.
Motion carries.
So we now have an amended bylaw in front of us. So is there, are there any other proposed amendments on this bylaw? Okay. So is there a motion to approve 9120 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on the bylaw? It's on this amended version of 9120.
I just have a question. Did we ever discuss censure as opposed to remove?
We have not discussed censure, no. Further questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Abstain.
Ms. Vowell?
Abstain.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
Yes. So we'll move on to 9130. You also have this proposal in front of you or in your email, and this is the one as it pertains to the standing committees.
I make a motion that we approve the revised bylaw 9130.
I'll second. Are there questions or discussion? Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts, Ms.
Yes.
Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Brody Collins.
Yes. So, I'm sorry, I have a lot of tabs. Okay. Committee reports. Are there committees that wish to make a report?
I do have a question. What about B9353?
I believe 90, that one was one that has already been previously approved. Like that has been, that was previously adopted to take out the secret ballot. That was done previously, I believe in 2016 or 2017, and then again in 2019. So I included this one as reference because the details of this bylaw affect 9120 and 9130. So I was including this as reference. I was not proposing any changes to this one, but are there amendments or changes you'd like to propose to 9353?
No, I was not aware that you guys voted on it. I'm fine with it.
Okay, so are there any committees that wish to make a report? So board member reports, I'm going to start with those who are on Zoom so I don't forget about you like I do sometimes. Susan, do you have a report?
None at this time. Thank you.
Donna, do you have a report?
None at this time.
Natalie?
No report, thank you.
Regina?
No.
Adam?
Yep, I have a few items. And let me clarify before I do. Dr. Adams, we still partner with College Bound, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So something came across my Facebook feed. Just wanted to let any parents, students out there know that they're having a virtual student information session on March 15th. You can go to collegebound.org to find out more about it. And again, it's for current 9th and 10th grade students to be on a college path. And that's all and I did also get a chance to attend last week board meeting, an advisory board meeting for the for Yateman, and got to connect with a bunch of people in the Yateman community and learn about what they're doing. So kudos to the Yateman family and the principal over there, and special shout out to Dr. Nash, the full service schools operator over there as well.
Dr. Roberts?
Thank you. Like Adam, I was also in attendance at the Yateman community discussion, and as always, it was excellent. I'd like to also compliment our Parent Action Council Chair for supporting the board's resolution on a moratorium of any new school openings. I am also fully committed and vested in the Council of Great City Schools training, and I will share as much as I'm learning with my colleagues on the board. And tonight I'm sharing the 8 characteristics of an effective school board. I'm also bringing back to the table our previous discussion around a student representative to the school board. I hope that we act on that so that as we bring in the new year, we will have a student representative joining us. I also want to compliment the students under the leadership of Mr. Matthew Pace at CPVA, who hosted an informative question and answer session with our mayoral candidates. And in closing, I'd like to also compliment the district, St. Louis Public Schools, who is hosting A-Bar training and a book study. The book is stamped, and it was just so good that I finished it in a day. And so I would recommend my colleagues to join the next one. I believe it's the 24th of the month. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to make you all aware of the school board candidate forum, which is being held on Thursday night. It's being hosted, it will be on Zoom, hosted by the SLPS Foundation, Local 420 of the American Federation of Teachers, and moderated by the League of Women Voters. So you can, through social media on the foundation's website, you can register to attend and submit questions. And on that note, I wanted to make a couple of points. So I'm frequently asked about how can people in the community or what can people do to support St. Louis Public Schools? And I always say two things. One is enroll your child in an SLPS school and then be an engaged member of that school's community. Or also, if you don't have children, be an active member in the school that is in your community. So that enrollment is what really drives this district forward. And so that's the number one most important thing you can do. The second is to elect good candidates to the school board who will represent not only your values and the values of your family, but that will stand up for the district as a whole and for all children that are attending here. And so as we go into this next election, asking questions of the candidates and making sure that they will stand up for St. Louis Public Schools as a public institution and as a public good, while also working to improve the district. It's a very critical election for this district. And so I will ask that you all be engaged in the campaign process and vote on April 6th. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn open session and move into closed session.
I make a motion that we adjourn the open session and move into closed session.
Second.
Ms. Williams?
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Vowell?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Brody Collins?
Yes.
We are adjourned.